You are listening to Train to Win podcast. This is your host, Greg Imhoff. Today we are launching our podcast for Train to Win Institute, and I can't think of a better guest than Wren Aaron for our first episode on this platform. Wren is the campus pastor for Church of the Highlands in Auburn, Alabama, West Campus, correct?
Yeah.
And I've watched Wren from afar and have admired and respected your leadership, your patience, and just your genuine love for people. And Wren, I'm always curious and inquisitive about people and their journey, and we know life typically is not a direct path.
Right.
It's just not, right? We want it to be, but it's not. So one of the questions I have for you is, did you ever think you would be in ministry?
Yeah.
And we have this sign here, the Dream Center, right, in Auburn?
Right.
And what was your dream growing up?
Wow. It's that's a great question. And let me go back. You said, what was your dream growing up?
Yeah, what was your dream growing up?
So in kindergarten, there was we had a production at the end of our kindergarten year, and part of that production was every kindergartner that graduated would step up on the stage and proclaim what they wanted to be when they grew up. I don't know if you did. You this was a long time ago. So yeah. So
That's awesome.
I got up on the stage, and my grandmother reminded me this in several situations. She reminded me. She said, "You got up on the stage, and you told everybody there that you wanted to be a preacher."
Yeah.
And everybody there went, "Oh, that's so good." And as a 5, 6-year-old, I said I wanted to be a preacher, but I had no idea what that meant. And so my journey was, school, graduate college, and I taught and coached.
I thought you were coaching.
Yeah, for 25 years in the state of Alabama, high school teacher and coach. And so, during that time, I think I had as much opportunity to flesh out what that preacher means. And then now I'm in ministry full time, right?
Well, that's awesome. So you proclaimed it at 5.
And really didn't understand it, but I did, yeah.
And interesting. And it took how many years before you fulfilled that? What was the...
And let me go back to high school. When I was in high school teaching and coaching, it was not an easy decision to step away from the world of education, because as I grew in my faith, I found that the mission field is really where you are, and being plugged into a school and with athletic teams. If you survey the country, that's the epicenter of society in most towns. So you can reach the entire city at the local school.
That's right.
And so I found myself there, and it was really tough, because I knew that God had me in that place for a reason, for a season. But yeah, then I then transitioned into full time, at Highlands at the age of 48.
Yeah. Making a career change?
Yeah, career change at 48, I guess.
Well, so we're really ministers wherever we are, I think is what you said. So, maybe it sounds like you were really in full-time ministry.
Yeah.
That just wasn't the description of occupation. So you had a great mission field with all these students and athletes. And what did you coach?
Well, in high school, typically you coach all sports.
That's right.
Especially in rural Alabama.
Yeah.
Football, number one.
Yeah.
That's usually the door to get into coaching, and I love football.
Yeah.
But basketball is my passion. I always loved it, and coached basketball every year.
Yeah.
When I was teaching, I coached baseball and fast pitch and did a little track on the side, but just kind of fully involved in all sports.
So when you were getting these prompts in your spirit about full-time ministry, discussing with your family, your wife, what was the life-changing moment, or I'm going this direction?
Right. I think we're called to be disciples, which of course is followers of Jesus. And in being a disciple, following the teachings of Jesus, he says to go ye therefore into all the world. So when I came to Auburn, got connected with the local church of the Highlands, and our senior pastor, Chris Hodges, he said something in a message one Sunday, 2008 maybe, that kind of changed my perspective. He said, Auburn, Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the two most strategic places in our state to reach the world. And when he said that, something inside of me went, I can see that. And so I caught that vision of why we have a campus here. And just being able to reach the world in one location was just an unbelievable opportunity.
It's awesome. I mean, people aren't familiar with Church of the Highlands. There's 23 campuses.
Right, in the state and one in Georgia.
And one in Georgia, right. So a phenomenal story. Yeah. And you have access to some great leadership resources. I know you have some training that is world-class because I know John Maxwell was a mentor, Pastor Chris. Right. I'm sure you guys have, benefited from those teachings as well.
Wow, yes.
So growing up, who would you say mentors, leaders that kind of shaped and molded you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to dip back into my high school days, because I was formed in high school because of the coaches that were around me. So I played, every sport available because in the 70s in eclectic Alabama.
Yeah, eclectic, right.
There's not a lot going on. And if you like sports and you like to participate with teams and stuff, that was the avenue.
Yeah.
And so after I graduated high school, I was actually playing softball with one of my coaches. And I graduated, and we were on the same men's softball team together. And he was probably the most influential coach I ever had growing up. And one day we were standing around talking between games, and he said, "Hey, what are you going to do? Now that you graduate, I know you started school." And I gave him what I was doing. He said, "You need to coach." And I had not really considered it, but when he said, "You need to coach," something tripped, and I went, "You're right. I need to coach." And from that moment forward, I pursued coaching and never looked back.
Well, you looked up to him, you trusted him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you knew he had your best interest.
Yes.
So
he saw things in me
that you didn't see.
I did not see, and I trusted him. And when he saw that, and then he spoke it.
It's just like our kids. We see things in them that they don't see, and their self-esteem or I'm not worthy enough. I'm applying for this job, but same thing. So he spoke life into you, and then that grew, and here you are today. That's awesome. So since you've been in ministry, what would you say have been the greatest challenges?
Yeah. No matter where you are in your work world, I'm kind of set the stage for it. If you're in the people business, there's always challenges.
Yeah.
And, I think figuring out rhythm of life with my personal life and my family's life, that has a direct effect on the people that I'm surrounded with, and so I'm in relationship with. So, it's not more of a challenge from the outside, because that's going on all the time.
Right.
It's more of on the inside and how my family and my life functions. So just trying to find the correct rhythm of life for where I am and what I am called to do.
Balance, and et cetera.
Yeah.
You said something that resonated with me because, people, a lot of people think of Christians or the church, and they get hurt or, someone says something to them at church and they don't ever go back.
Right.
And as we grow, we understand that it's not about the building.
Right.
And just because people go to church, they can say things. We're human beings. I tell people that's why I go to church. I need church.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting that you said that because people I talk to, no, I don't go because a lot of hypocrites. I said, yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
We're fallen people, trying to do the best we can.
Right.
So what did you say this next generation?
Yeah.
How are you guys trying to reach the next generation?
Yeah. We're in every generation looks at where they are, and they look at the generation behind them, and they ask these same questions. I mean, so that what you just asked me is really not a new thing.
Yeah.
I'm in a unique seat as far as generations. When I was growing up, I was privileged to be in a relationship with my great-grandparents, my grandparents, and my parents.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm a grandfather, So I've got a front row seat to my children and my grandchildren. So I've got like a 6th generational thing that I can vividly remember and pull things from. And so looking at it from that seat, it is a challenge. Every generation is a challenge. I mean, you can name it. Probably now the number one challenge is the amount of information that's accessible, and it changes the way people think and process. And there's so many platforms that everyone has.
Yes.
That's for adults too, by the way.
Yes.
It's not just for, but the 2 generations below me, they're growing up. That's life. And that's a whole different thing. But it's just a different thing. You know?
Yeah, my kids have had cell phones since they've been born.
Right.
Well, not born, but
Sure.
that's all they never saw a rotary phone.
Right. What's a rotary phone?
Yeah,
they
don't know.
I'm kidding.
They can never wait, and leave a message, right? Or you couldn't get a hold of people. It's amazing. Right. So let me ask you this. Building relationships or dealing with so many people, and you maybe counsel people as well. How would you go about talking to someone, witnessing to someone, or just building a relationship?
Yeah, and I think all relationships are built on trust. And so if you can establish some amount of trust, then it makes things a lot easier. And also, the more value you put into people, the more I think it opens up channels of conversation and trust. So by placing value in someone, and that can be done in so many different ways, then we all tend to, not they, we all tend to open up a little bit more.
That's right.
The trust and value thing, I think, is really, really vital.
Which goes to small groups, and
if
you can be intimate and take your mask off,
right,
and share transparency,
right.
Which for some people we know that's difficult. So I always tell my wife, I'm going to try to build a bridge for the relationship.
Yes,
I'm not going to go. If you don't have the relationship and the trust, as you said, you're never going to get anywhere.
No.
Yeah, especially in today's society,
right?
With all the information, as you said, on all these platforms, and people are reading so much and digesting this information, et cetera. So what would you say the best life lesson that your parents gave you growing up?
There were all kinds of lessons along the way, but I think the one thing that I think I learned from them, and it was from their demonstration, and there was also a expectation, was a work ethic. They instilled in me, both my parents instilled in me an incredible work ethic. And I have leaned into that, since my first job was when I was 12, and I've really held a job pretty much since I was 12. And it was not a duty or chore. It was like my parents taught me that, it's a privilege, and you work hard. You work hard. So that's one of the things I always will carry, with me from them.
I think that generation of work ethic was same with my parents, hard workers. I used to watch my dad and just kind of admire his work ethic, a man of few words, but just a worker. Nowadays, right now we can't find people to work. There's a labor shortage, which is amazing to me.
Right.
I can't comprehend all that. I'm not smart enough to comprehend what's going on. And since you've been at Highlands, if you discuss some leadership challenges, because you have staff,
right? You
have people, you have a team, and we're still talking about human beings,
right?
What would be the challenge of you leading a team?
Yeah, and we have a lot of, which is amazing. We have a lot of young leaders and people who are really trying to navigate just life, like we all are. But when you're younger, there's the navigation is a little more intense because you really don't have it figured out.
Right.
So really, just helping people navigate how commitments work alongside of life and how they're. And I use the word rhythm because balance is hard to obtain. I think it's unobtainable if you're talking balance. Rhythm is something that can change and needs to change and can keep everything in check. So just trying to help younger leaders figure out that rhythm of life and knowing that things are going to be okay, but there's seasons where you have to work through some things and look to the other side.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a great analogy. Because they don't have it all figured out, and they from what I've seen just with my children, they worry about the future.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? What about this internship next summer?
Right.
And my advice is just take one day at a time. You're doing the best you can do. It's going to be okay. Don't get too far ahead of yourself.
Right.
Because you're worrying about something that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So I think that's great advice. And what would you say you enjoyed the most about your position?
I work for, and this is my opinion, I work for the greatest church in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do believe it. And when I say work for, I am on staff, but I would do what I'm doing now without a paycheck. I mean, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, we firmly believe, in our realm of leadership and with church that everyone started out as a volunteer. We call them dream teamers, and you're not really hired. You're just rewarded for doing what you've been doing.
Right.
And so Pastor Chris Hodges, our senior pastor, has led us so well in that area, and I love all aspects of it. I love opportunities. I love challenges. I love being led well. I love having, just some great people surrounding me and being able to do life with my friends, with you guys, with friends. I mean, that's what, it helps everything make sense.
Yeah. Well, they say you find your vocation, you're on vacation.
Yeah.
So you kind of feel like that a little bit.
Yeah.
Not like,
No, really.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. So that's a good place to be in life. And
I've never dreaded a day going to work. I've never
awesome.
I don't want to go to work today.
Yeah, how many people can say that?
Yeah.
Maybe as a teacher you had a couple of those days, but
and it's crazy. This is not a brag, and I don't understand it, but I never dreaded going to work. I've looked forward to it, and I think I'll go back. My parents instilled in me what a privilege it is to work and be able to work, and so I think I just welcomed the day, and just kind of got after it.
And you were in your calling, it seemed, because it was still a mission field.
Sure.
So you used to encouraging, edifying,
right?
Helping kids navigate.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure as a coach, you had
there was a lot of edifying in a lot of different ways. Ooh,
for sure. Yeah. Come by your house and the problems they had, et cetera. So that's a blessing for sure, because most people can't say that, and I know you understand that and appreciate that. With the leadership at Highlands, a lot of people know Highlands now around the world because they've done some phenomenal things, and they're an instrument to a lot of other churches. The teaching that you receive, and maybe on a weekly basis, I guess there's some teaching that you guys receive. They probably bring in some people, or I mean, how beneficial is that? Has that changed you in certain ways, or your perspective?
Right. And Highlands to me functions a lot like a river, where there's a lot going through, where you have an opportunity for water can either be like a pond where nothing escapes, it stays in the same place, or it can be a river where things are flowing. And I feel like Highlands treats it like it's flowing. In other words, there's all kind of information, there's all kind of leadership. Here we got some for you, but you know what? There's some more coming down the stream. And so to be challenged, encouraged in different ways from different people, for me personally, it helps me a lot. I love to hear different takes from different people and kind of try to sort some things out that way.
That's good. So you have access to a lot of different resources,
right?
That can really benefit you guys. That's,
without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because I'm taught to take and apply what you can. Right. Because there's so many great things out there, you can't possibly apply everything you do.
Right. That's
can't
right.
possibly. So it's a filter that you have to. That comes with age too.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, because as a young guy, man, I'm trying to get everything, apply everything, and there's no way.
You can't apply everything.
No.
Yeah. It's kind of like that rhythm you're talking about. Take those things and go with the flow. And so, what would be the greatest lesson that you learned from your kids and that you have taught your kids? Right.
What I've learned from both of my kids. We've never, and as a family, we've never experienced adoption and foster. Through my kids, I was able to understand a little more about our faith and our God because both of my girls have adopted and fostered to adoption.
Awesome.
And so as far as I guess a life lesson, to see it fleshed out in front of me, it's been fun, but it's been challenging and encouraging to see how that process works. And now we're advocates of adoption and foster care, foster to adoption, because we understand it at a whole different level,
Yeah, that takes a special person
Yeah.
to take in a foster child
Yeah.
and or adopt
Right.
and love these kids like they're
Right.
their own. And to see that from your perspective, you're like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost hard to understand, if you have biological children, how a child could be adopted and brought into a family, or even fostered and brought into a family, and what do you do with it? What do you do with that emotional, the emotions that you have? How do you distribute it, and what do you do with it? But it was very supernatural when it took place in our family. It's like, they're ours. It was kind of an automatic. You didn't have to think about it. It taught me a great lesson about being adopted into the kingdom.
Yes.
So didn't deserve it, but
right. We're adopted now.
That's right. Your family. Doesn't matter. Your family.
Right. You have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And we're going to love you.
You asked a 2-part question. So what do I think I had, taught my children? And that a minute ago we were talking about the generational thing. I have seen God do amazing things through 6 generations. Slight changes, and looking at what I knew 50 years ago to what I see now, and what I think we have instilled in our children, to see them flesh that out in their children, it's really been just a love for God at an intimate relational level, which, that wasn't always the case.
Right.
It was a go to church. It was go to Sunday, go on Sunday, and that was kind of it. But just to watch, and I think our children picked up on that a little bit from us, and as far as just the relational component of it. And now in their children, my gosh, they're like we were when we were 30, as far as their understanding and their desire for spiritual things.
Yeah, you think that what I kind of see with my kids is the conversations I have with my kids, my parents never would have had with me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, never,
Right.
about the world or, sex or any of these things.
Sure.
As your kids get older, that you need to have discussions about.
Absolutely.
And my parents, never had that. So I think people today are probably more open.
Right.
Some, not all.
Right.
But I think it's a good thing when you sit down with your children and talk to them, and you must have instilled some great values and compassion for them to, and both of them adopted. Right.
Yeah. We've got biological, we've got adoption, we've got foster to adoption, all in one little group there. So
awesome.
You get to see like the whole world right there.
The whole world.
Yeah. That's
awesome. I wonder what made them want to, or they just felt a call into do it.
Yeah. Some because of infertility, and some because of we want to do something to change a family.
Right.
So it was kind of different reasons, but the end result is the same. Yeah. Like kids are in a family now that love them and care for them and are, raising them to be, world changers for Jesus. So
yeah. So you sound like a pretty disciplined guy with your work ethic, and so you're probably fairly structured. I guess somewhat.
No, but thank you. With where I am as far as occupationally with the church that we are set up and take down, we're portable. Our office space is not really, and I do have structure, but it takes place in different places.
Right.
I have things to accomplish, but it takes on. We have a term we use. We say. Flexcellence, which takes flexibility
and excellence,
and puts it together, and we really work hard at that because we have to be extremely flexible here.
You got to be really flexible.
Yeah, but to get things done as well.
Right, especially when you're putting up, tearing down, and
right.
So what's that process? The putting up and tearing down.
Yeah,
what's that like? I mean, that's getting there at 5 a.m, or
it's getting there early. And transforming a hotel into a church campus in about 45 minutes.
Right,
and then. People walk in, they see that. Then when everyone leaves, we take it down, and it's back to a hotel. We call it the church elves have arrived. It's like we get in, we transform everything.
And it is amazing that the leadership, because people volunteer to do that.
Absolutely.
So you definitely have to have good leadership throughout all of Highlands.
Right.
We know it starts at the top and goes down, but for all of Highlands, for people to want to volunteer at a campus, to do that every Sunday.
Right.
I mean, it's really amazing.
Right.
And in most churches that I've been associated with in my life, that there's a few.
Right.
Everyone does. It's the same who,
Right. Right.
do everything.
Yeah.
But Highlands isn't like that.
Yeah.
There's thousands and thousands of people that are helping, which is really amazing, and attributes to the leadership.
Yeah.
Really, I think that's awesome. And Highlands, they do this up and tear down for X amount of years.
Right.
Then they usually build.
Yes. That's the model so far, and we build when it's necessary, and so everyone stays portable until there's that time, and it's different for every community and every space where we can't sustain this any longer. Basically, we force.
Yeah, you force
gotta
the
force
walls.
it. Yeah, you gotta force it. Yeah.
You're growing out of space,
which I love. I mean, I don't. I think that puts a beautiful, not pressure, but it puts a beautiful call on everybody's life. Well, let's get in here and get after it. Make a difference.
That's awesome. And I know Highlands pays their debt free.
Yeah.
Cash, which is pretty amazing as well. So the blueprint was set many years ago for that, and you guys have just come along and jumped on board. And like you said, you love what you do.
Yeah.
So it's not when you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, you're not like that. You're like, I get to wake up and do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up here, and I just want to say I appreciate your time and taking time out to help us.
Right.
If you would leave us with one thing that you would say is vital right now to where we are as a society, what would that be?
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
put you on the spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that right now in our world, the what leads a lot of our decisions, and it needs to be the why needs to lead our decisions, because if we look at the what, I think we get sideways and crazy really fast because there's so much going on. But if we focus on the why, I think it kind of makes things make sense and helps us order our steps every day, helps us order how we treat people, and helps us order, I think, the way our society could function better if we took a deep breath and looked at the why.
Yeah, and focus on the why daily, not on the peripheral or the media, what's coming down and getting in your spirit, because it will, you'll be disoriented and it will mess you up a little bit.
Right.
So that's a great way to end it. I appreciate that and appreciate your time.
Greg, thank you so much, man.
All right, brother.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming into our space.
And
being here with us.
Center,
because
dreams come true here.
And let me just make sure everybody understands, we don't do sleep studies here.
Yeah,
we get those calls all the time. Hey, man, what time you?
Dream Center.
Right, we actually don't. But
really, you get calls like that?
Absolutely.
Really? That's
so
crazy.
What we do here is it's the hub for outreach for Auburn and Opelika.
And this because the Dream Center to end up here is a great outreach ministry.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool for our community. There's a lot of churches and ministries that use this building and these facilities for reaching our community.
Storms happen.
Absolutely.
Food is dispersed from here.
Right.
So it's a lot of just good thing. And another great I guess volunteer that helped put this thing together.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And made it happen. All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.